I'm just reading right now. Let's see. Part of political climate, aggressive marketing, and its overdose crisis made regulators and public restricted about drug promotion, but currency question is mostly about money priorities and legal laws, not litigation achievement. What is society openly advertising itself today? Even though rescheduling has been proposed, but not finalized as of November 2025. Hearings and rulemakings have been ongoing. That affects advertising, banking, and interstate trade, so using it as broad money would still hit legal walls. Not even talking about the echo problem. So basically everybody smoking up would affect the, greenhouse gases, which would further fuck up the planet, which we're already fucking up with AI. So there you go. That's why that wouldn't work. Now, Mr. Blue, here's that. So we're saying, okay, so we're gonna say Mr. Blue hears all of this, right? He hears all these explanations of why he shouldn't do drugs, specifically in this case, marijuana, even if it would help in his coping mechanisms in the short term. Now, Mr. Blue has no direction in life. So let's propose this question. So let's say Mr. Blue has no direction in his life and feels like if he had used weed in his past, he would have been happier and in a better place than he is now, because he relies on no coping mechanism. Mr. Blue ends up hurting many people close to Mr. Blue because of this fact. Is it still, what direction? I wouldn't say what direction. We don't want an exact answer to Mr. Blue's problem, right? We want an answer to Mr. Blue's problem, but we don't want an exact answer to Mr. Blue's problem. I don't know exactly what we want in terms of Mr. Blue, but I know we do want an answer. So, Mr. Blue is not using drugs. Mr. Blue has regretted not using drugs. Mr. Blue sees that as the only coping mechanism because everybody around Mr. Blue is using that as a coping mechanism, even though they don't really care about the long-term effects of using these drugs, right? So Mr. Blue still goes on not using this, and Mr. Blue develops a coping mechanism to bottle things, which is not a healthy coping mechanism. Now, Mr. Blue, because of all this, because he has an unhealthy coping mechanism without the use of drugs, he feels like using drugs would have helped a lot in this case, because his coping mechanism is leading people away from him regardless of the use of drugs, letting himself go, not being focused on his goals, right? So, that being said, would Mr. Blue be better off using drugs in the short term, or do you think Mr. Blue would regret using drugs to cope in the future? That the future point that he is right now. So let's say that. So would Mr. Blue regret relying on drugs to? Would Mr. Blue regret relying on drugs to help him? Would an alternate version of Mr. Blue that used drugs to cope regret relying on them in the same way Mr. Blue regrets not using them. In the same way the current Mr. Blue regrets not using them. Not using them because of his poor coping skills. Boom! That's that question. I do need to pet the cat though. Ooh. Alright. So, regret trade-offs. So, this is a short take. An alternate Mr. Blue who relies on weed to cope would likely develop a different regret. Not because relief is bad, but because relief without skills tends to grow dependence, tolerance, avoidance, narrowed life. Over time, that can clash with his values, freedom, reliability, and intimacy, and create its own regret, just as bottling does. So it's not use equals happy, comma, don't use equals miserable, right? Which is the coping process that he builds. So here's a more like fleshed out way. So relief isn't bad, but relief without the skills to kind of like fall back on yourself is bad. Okay. Not a good thing to not be able to fall back on yourself, right? And to rely on something. Especially because you're not developing the skills. You're not developing the skills to do anything. Spend some time together. Communication points. What the hell? What is this? What is this? Let me try to upgrade these people, man. But going back to what I was talking about. So bottling. Few short-term costs. You can bottle yourself, your pain. But pressure builds. It blows up, it hurts relationships, and then you have regret for the harm that it does. Drug-only path, quick relief, but increasing reliance and tolerance for the drugs. You have less agency, and you sink into avoidance. It stalls your growth and strains your trust. But it's a different type of regret. Right? The third path. Building your skills instead of having the bottling path, right? Instead of doing the drugs, right? Learn skills that lower the pressure. So if you choose to learn some skills that can help you cope with your situation, Mr. Blue, you wouldn't have to you don't have to consider weed. That's the quick way. That's a quick and fast way, but it leads to a different kind of addiction, leads to a different type of regret, Mr. Blue. So work on yourself, work on your skills. It's harder. It's a lot harder to work on yourself and your skills than to rely on drugs, right? But Mr. Blue, I think this is what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to work on yourself. Rate this too, okay? I'll leave you with this one thing for Mr. Blue's situation, right? So basically, let's do this. The philosophical core, it's true coping versus numbing. The difference lies in the nature of the coping mechanism. The current Mr. Blue has regrets tied to not coping at all, and the alternate Mr. Blue will have regrets tied to miscoping, so coping badly, right? using a method that numbed the pain and allowed him to tolerate a dysfunctional life, but did not resolve the initial problems or lead to long-term fulfillment. Right? So in the end, both versions of Mr. Blue arrive at the point of regret because neither found a way to genuinely face the problems or process their difficult emotions, which is the foundation of a stable and fulfilling life. So, anyway, to end this, drugs may help you feel good, at least in this case, marijuana, but it does have its problems, especially if you're addicted. I will say addiction, not drugs. Addiction leads to its own problems, long-term damage problem. In the short term, it is good though, as long as it's used healthily, right? You don't want to use because you don't want to use to cope. You don't want to do anything to cope, to deal with something, to take away the pain, right? That's how addicts are usually born, especially if addiction runs in your family. So just take that as a grain of salt. That's the iceberg done. Now we can focus on whatever we're doing right now. Okay, but if you guys want to check out more stuff like this with Mr. Blue and stuff, you can check it out on Inkit. I haven't posted it on Royal Road yet, but I did post a Blue Raspberry session with Frosty talking to Mr. Blue about his problems. All right. Moving on though.